The American economy, the job market, the business world, the system of exchange that governs how money moves between people, the marketplace does not care about your effort. It does not care about your loyalty, your intentions, your circumstances, or your years of service. The marketplace pays for one thing and one thing only: value delivered. The value you are capable of delivering. The value you are currently delivering, and nothing else. Jim Rohn, the philosopher and business mentor who influenced an entire generation of American success thinkers, including Tony Robbins, who credits Rohn as his most important teacher, built his entire philosophy on a single observation that sounds simple and cuts like a blade. He said, "If you want more, you have to become more. Not work harder at what you already do. Not put in longer hours doing the same thing. Become more. Develop more. Bring more value to the marketplace than you currently bring. Because the marketplace, in its cold and indifferent honesty, will pay you exactly what you are worth to it, and not a dollar more." Before you feel that this dismisses the real structural barriers we explored in previous audiobooks, the rigged system, the unequal starting lines, the institutions that extract rather than empower, let me be clear, those things are real. The system is genuinely tilted, and none of that changes what I am about to tell you. The person who understands both things, who knows the system is unfair, and decides to develop themselves relentlessly anyway, that person is playing at a level that neither the system nor its limitations can fully contain. This audiobook is not about the system. It is about you. Specifically, about the gap between where you are and where you are capable of being. That gap has a name. It is not bad luck. It is not an unfair economy. The name of that gap is underdevelopment, and it is the most solvable problem in the world. There is a question that most people never ask themselves honestly, because the honest answer is too uncomfortable to sit with. The question is this: why would the marketplace pay me more than it currently does? Not why should it? Not why is it fair that it doesn't? Why would it? What specific, differentiated value would I be delivering that would compel another human being to exchange more of their money for what I produce? Most people, when pressed, cannot answer that question clearly. And that inability to answer it is the entire story of why their income has plateaued. The marketplace is not sentimental. It does not factor in your good intentions or your work ethic. A person who works 12 hours a day doing something the market does not value highly will earn less than a person who works 4 hours a day doing something the market desperately needs and only a few people can provide. This is not injustice. It is the mechanism of a market economy. And understanding it, really understanding it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, is the beginning of a completely different financial trajectory. Jim Rohn told a story about working as a farm laborer as a young man. He worked hard. He showed up every day. He gave honest effort. And at the end of each week, he received exactly what an unskilled farm laborer was worth to the market, which was not very much. The farm owner was not cheating him. The farm owner was paying him precisely what the market said his labor was worth. The revelation that changed Rohn's life was not that the system was unfair. It was that the system was telling him something true, that his current level of development was producing his current level of income, and if he wanted a different income, he needed to produce a different level of value. That insight sounds obvious when stated plainly. It is not obvious in practice. In practice, the natural human response to inadequate compensation is one of the following: resentment toward the employer, resentment toward the system, passive waiting for recognition, or a job change that swaps one version of the same problem for another. None of these responses address the actual variable. None of them answer the question of what additional value you could bring that would compel the market to pay you more. And until that question is answered, and answered with action, not just reflection, the income number will not move in any meaningful way. Here is the harder edge of this truth. In the American job market, most people are paid within a narrow band for their job title and tenure. They accept the band. They negotiate modestly, if at all. They receive their annual 2 or 3% cost of living adjustment and feel relieved if it covers inflation. And they spend no deliberate effort developing skills, expertise, or capabilities that would move them outside that band entirely into a different category, a different title, a different market, a different relationship with compensation altogether. They are on a treadmill that moves at the speed the employer sets, and they have not asked themselves whether there is a door off the treadmill, because looking for that door requires acknowledging that staying on it is, at some level, a choice. Jim Rohn said something that has been repeated so many times it risks losing its force, so I want you to hear it fresh. He said, "Work harder on yourself than you do on your job." The average person works hard on their job and easy on themselves, and so they earn an average income, live an average life, and wonder why the extraordinary outcomes they were promised never arrived. What does it mean to work on yourself? Not in the vague, motivational poster sense. Concretely, practically. In the context of your financial life and your earning capacity, it means developing skills that the market pays a premium for. It means accumulating knowledge in domains where knowledge commands extraordinary compensation. It means building a professional reputation so strong and so specific that the market comes to you rather than you competing for it. It means expanding your ability to communicate, to persuade, to lead, to solve problems that other people find intractable. It means cultivating relationships with people who operate at higher levels than your current circle, because your network is a direct multiplier of your opportunity. And it means doing all of this continuously, not as a one-time event, but as a permanent orientation toward growth. The economic returns on personal development are not uniform. Some investments in yourself produce marginal returns. Others are transformative. The skill that moves you from being a competent employee to a remarkable one. The credential that opens a market previously closed to you. The communication ability that allows you to sell your ideas to decision makers who previously never knew you existed. The leadership capacity that shifts you from being managed to doing the managing and being compensated accordingly. Identifying and pursuing the specific developments that will have the greatest impact on your earning capacity is itself a skill, and most people never develop it because they were never taught to think about their own development as a strategic, return-oriented investment. Charlie Munger, who alongside Warren Buffett built one of the greatest investment records in history, had a concept he called the lattice work of mental models. His argument was that the person who has deeply understood a wide range of disciplines like psychology, economics, mathematics, history, thinks about problems in ways that the narrow specialist simply cannot. They see connections, patterns, and solutions that are invisible to someone whose knowledge runs only in one direction. And this multidisciplinary breadth, Munger argued, is one of the most powerful competitive advantages available to anyone, not just in investing, but in business, in negotiation, in problem solving, in any domain where thinking quality determines outcomes. The practical implication is this: the person who reads broadly, who studies disciplines outside their immediate professional domain, who is genuinely curious about how the world works across multiple dimensions, that person develops a kind of cognitive richness that compounds over time exactly the way financial capital compounds. Every insight connects to prior insights. Every new framework enhances the utility of existing frameworks. The mental return on intellectual investment is not linear, it accelerates. And it never loses value, never crashes with the market, and cannot be taken from you. Not all skills are created equal in the marketplace. Some are common, easily replicated, and compensated accordingly. Others are rare, high leverage, and compensated at levels that can seem almost irrational to those who do not have them. If you are going to invest your development time, and time is the real currency of self-development, it makes sense to invest it where the market returns are greatest. The first is the ability to sell, not in the used car salesman sense, but in the broadest meaning of the word. The ability to communicate an idea compellingly enough that another person changes their thinking, their behavior, or their allocation of resources in response. Every significant outcome in professional life requires selling your ideas, your proposals, your qualifications, your vision, your product, your business case. The engineer who can sell their technical solution to non-technical executives will always outperform the equally brilliant engineer who cannot. The job candidate who can articulate their value clearly and compellingly in an interview will always earn more than the equally capable candidate who cannot. Sales ability is not a personality type. It is a learnable skill, and its market value across virtually every profession and industry is extraordinary. The second is the ability to lead. Specifically, the ability to get results through other people. Individual contributors earn on the basis of what they personally produce. Leaders earn on the basis of what their team produces, which is a multiple of what any individual could produce alone. The transition from individual contributor to effective leader is one of the highest return skill developments available in the corporate world, and it is consistently underprepared for. Most people are promoted into leadership based on their performance as individual contributors, then left to figure out leadership without meaningful training. The person who deliberately studies leadership, who reads the literature, seeks mentorship, takes on management opportunities before they feel ready, and treats the development of their team as seriously as the development of their own output, that person moves up the compensation ladder in a way that individual excellence alone never achieves. The third is financial literacy itself, the very subject of this audiobook series. The ability to read a financial statement, to understand valuation, to evaluate an investment thesis, to manage a budget with precision, to understand how debt, equity, and cash flow interact in a business context. These skills are shockingly rare even among well-educated, high-earning professionals, and they are disproportionately rewarded in any role that involves financial decision-making, which, at senior levels, is virtually every role. The business owner who understands their numbers at a granular level makes categorically better decisions than the one who delegates financial understanding entirely to their accountant. The executive who can read a balance sheet with fluency commands authority in rooms where financial decisions are made. Financial literacy is not just personal finance, it is professional leverage. The fourth is the ability to write with clarity and precision. In an economy increasingly mediated by text, email, reports, proposals, marketing, and strategy documents, the ability to organize thought clearly and communicate it compellingly on the page is a competitive advantage in every industry. The person who writes well gets their ideas taken seriously. They win the proposal, they get the grant, they build the audience, they advance the argument. Writing is thinking made visible, and clear writing signals clear thinking to everyone who reads it. In a world full of unclear, verbose, jargon-dense communication, the person who writes with simplicity and force stands out in a way that is immediately and materially rewarded. The fifth is the ability to solve problems that others find difficult or impossible. This sounds obvious, but its implications are profound. The market pays a premium, sometimes an extreme premium, for the removal of pain. The lawyer who can navigate the most complex litigation, the engineer who can debug the system everyone else gave up on, the consultant who can diagnose the organizational dysfunction that is hemorrhaging revenue, the therapist who can reach the patients other therapists could not. Difficulty is where compensation concentrates. Easy problems are solved cheaply by many people in a competitive market that drives prices down. Hard problems are solved expensively by few people in a seller's market where the solver has extraordinary pricing power. Deliberately seeking out and developing the capacity to solve hard problems in your domain is one of the highest return strategic decisions you can make in your professional life. Jim Rohn was not gentle about this. He said your income is a direct reflection of your contribution to the marketplace. It is your report card. Not a report card on your worth as a human being that is a different and entirely separate matter, but a report card on the value you are currently delivering to the economy. And like any report card, it can be improved, but only by doing the work that improvement requires. This principle offends people. It offended people when Rohn said it 50 years ago, and it offends people today, because it implies a level of agency that feels unfair in a world where structural barriers are real. It sounds like it is blaming the poor for their poverty, and applied crudely, without context, Without acknowledgement of the real inequities we have discussed at length in this series, it can be used that way. But here is the distinction that matters. Rohn was not saying the game is fair. He was saying, given that the game exists and you are in it, the only variable you control is your own development. You cannot control the tax code. You cannot control your starting zip code. You cannot control whether your employer appreciates you or whether the industry you entered is growing or contracting. What you can control entirely, completely, starting today, is what you know, what you can do, and what value you are capable of bringing to any market you participate in. And that variable, developed relentlessly over years, has the power to overcome barriers that feel immovable at the start. There is a particular kind of person who hears this message and does something about it. They are not necessarily the most talented. They are not always the most educated. They are not always starting from the best position. What they have is an orientation toward growth that treats every gap in their capabilities not as a fixed limitation, but as an invitation. They see the difference between where they are and where they want to be, not as evidence of unfairness, but as a development agenda. And they work that agenda day after day, year after year, not frantically, not desperately, but steadily, deliberately, with the patience of someone who understands that the compounding of human capital is as real and as powerful as the compounding of financial capital. Rohn also said something about time that belongs in every serious financial conversation. He said, "Time is more valuable than money. You can get more money. You cannot get more time. Every day you spend not developing yourself is a day of compounding you will never recover, not because you are falling behind some arbitrary standard, but because the gap between your current earning capacity and your potential earning capacity has a price. It is paid in years, and years, once spent, are not refundable." This is not meant to create anxiety. It is meant to create urgency, productive urgency. The kind that makes a person turn off the television an hour earlier and spend that hour reading something that expands their capability. The kind that makes a person seek out a mentor rather than waiting to be mentored. The kind that makes a person raise their hand for the difficult project rather than the comfortable one, because they know that difficulty is where growth lives and growth is where compensation follows. There is a zone that every human being gravitates toward naturally, a zone of familiar competence, a zone where the challenges are manageable, the outcomes are predictable, the risks are contained, and the discomfort is minimal. We call it the comfort zone, and financially speaking, it is one of the most expensive places you can live. The comfort zone is not lazy. That is a mischaracterization. People in their comfort zones often work very hard. They show up consistently. They perform reliably. They do what is expected with genuine diligence. The problem is not the effort, it is the ceiling. The comfort zone, by definition, is the zone where you are not developing. You are executing skills you already have, solving problems you already know how to solve, navigating situations you have navigated before. This produces output. It does not produce growth. And in a marketplace that compensates growth, staying in the comfort zone means accepting a compensation ceiling that will not move regardless of how hard you work within it. The research on skill development from cognitive scientist Anders Ericsson, whose work was popularized in Malcolm Gladwell's discussion of the 10,000-hour rule, makes this precise. Ericsson's actual finding was not that 10,000 hours of any practice produces expertise. It was that 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, specifically designed to push beyond current capability, to address weaknesses, and to operate at the edge of competence, where difficulty and discomfort are constant, produces expertise. The pianist who plays the same pieces they already know for 10,000 hours does not become a master. The pianist who spends 10,000 hours working on the passages they cannot yet play becomes one. Comfort produces repetition. Discomfort produces mastery. In professional and financial terms, this means that the assignments, projects, roles, and challenges that make you most uncomfortable are almost certainly the ones most worth pursuing. The project outside your technical domain that requires you to learn on the job, the management role you feel unready for, the negotiation you have been avoiding, The business you have been thinking about starting, but have been waiting until the conditions were perfect. Conditions are never perfect. The readiness you are waiting for is a feeling that only comes after the act, not before it. And every time you wait for it before taking the leap, you are choosing the comfort zone and accepting its ceiling. There is a specific comfort zone trap that is unique to financially literate, moderately successful people. It is the trap of the good enough income. The salary that covers the lifestyle comfortably, with a little left over, is perhaps the most dangerous income level of all. It is high enough to eliminate urgency. It is not high enough to generate real wealth. And it produces a comfortable stagnation, a life that feels fine, that raises no alarms, that generates no crisis, compelling enough to force reinvention while the years pass and the gap between the life lived and the life possible quietly widens. Jim Rohn called this the disease of the average life, a life not defined by failure, but by a quiet forfeit of potential that never announces itself loudly enough to demand response. Let's get tactical, because philosophy without application is just inspiration, and inspiration without implementation is just entertainment. The question is not whether you should develop yourself. The question is how, starting now, with the time and resources you actually have. The first principle is to invest in yourself before you invest anywhere else. Not as a cliché, as a budget line. A specific, committed, non-negotiable allocation of money each month toward your own development. Books, courses, conferences, coaching, mentorship. The percentage varies by circumstance, but the principle is fixed. The return on investment of developing a high-value skill is frequently superior to any financial investment available to you. And unlike a stock portfolio, it does not crash in a recession. And it compounds in ways that are difficult to quantify, but impossible to miss over a decade of consistent application. The second principle is to be ruthlessly selective about what you develop. Not everything is worth your time. The question to ask about any development investment is not whether the skill is interesting, but whether it is valuable specifically. Whether it will make you more valuable to a market you want to be in, whether it will open options currently closed to you, or whether it will compound with capabilities you already have in ways that create a genuinely differentiated professional profile. Generalists who develop breadth across strategically selected domains often outperform narrow specialists in career optionality and compensation ceiling. But the breadth must be strategic, not random. Knowing a little about everything is not a differentiator. Knowing a great deal about several things that intersect in rare and useful ways is. The third principle is to learn from people who have the results you want. Not from people who have advice, but from people who have results. This distinction, which sounds obvious, is routinely ignored. The financial advice landscape in America is full of people who are paid to teach financial strategies they have never personally executed at scale. The business coaching industry is populated by coaches whose primary business is coaching, rather than the underlying business discipline they claim to teach. The personal development world contains abundant motivation, delivered by people whose primary achievement is delivering motivation. Seek out people who have built the specific thing you are trying to build. Study how they actually did it, not how they describe it in retrospect. Model the behaviors, the decisions, the learning investments, the daily disciplines that produce the outcome, not the polished narrative that follows it. The fourth principle is to teach what you learn. This is a practice Rohn was explicit about, and the research on learning retention supports it with striking consistency. You do not fully understand something until you can explain it clearly to someone else. Teaching forces the gaps in your understanding to the surface. It requires you to organize knowledge in ways that passive consumption does not. The person who writes the insightful analysis, gives the useful presentation, teaches the workshop, mentors the junior colleague, that person is not just developing others. They are deepening their own expertise and building the kind of professional visibility that the market pays for. The fifth principle is to never stop. Development is not a phase. It is not a thing you do in your 20s and complete. It is a permanent orientation. The most formidable professionals in every field, the ones still generating extraordinary results decades into their careers, are distinguished by a quality that is almost childlike in its simplicity. They are still curious. They are still learning. They have never decided that they know enough. They pick up books with the same eagerness they had at the beginning of their careers. They ask questions that less experienced people assume experts do not need to ask. They are, in the deepest sense, still developing. And that ongoing development is precisely why they remain extraordinary when peers of similar original talent have plateaued and faded. Here is the direct line between everything we have talked about in this audiobook and your actual bank account. Your income, current and future, is bounded by a ceiling. That ceiling is not set by your employer, not by the economy, not by the industry you are in. The ceiling is set by the level of value you are capable of delivering to the marketplace. And that level is a function of your skills, your knowledge, your network, your reputation, and your willingness to solve problems of increasing difficulty and complexity. Every skill you develop raises the ceiling. Every domain of knowledge you master raises it. Every relationship with someone operating at a higher level raises it. Every time you treat your own development as the most important investment in your portfolio, the ceiling rises. And income, with some lag and some friction, follows the ceiling, not immediately, but reliably in the direction of the value you deliver. This is the part of the financial freedom conversation that most financial books skip entirely. They talk about saving rates and investment vehicles and tax optimization, all of which matter and all of which we have covered in depth. But they rarely talk about the income side of the equation with the same seriousness. And the income side is not fixed. It is the most dynamic variable in the entire financial equation. A person who doubles their income while maintaining their current savings rate has just doubled the speed at which they build wealth. The leverage on income growth, in terms of its effect on the financial independence timeline, is extraordinary. And income growth is driven by one thing above all others: the development of skills and capabilities that the market increasingly values and increasingly cannot easily replace. The person who earns $50,000 a year and saves 20% is building wealth. The person who earns $100,000 and saves 20% is building wealth twice as fast. The person who earns $200,000 and saves 20% wealth that most people would call impossible to accumulate becomes possible within a decade. The difference between those three people is not luck. It is not circumstance alone. It is the accumulated result of development decisions, small and large, daily and annual, that compounded over years into a qualitatively different level of value delivered to the marketplace. You have abilities that are not yet fully developed. You have knowledge that is not yet fully acquired. You have a potential for contribution to the world professionally, financially, personally, that is not yet fully realized. I do not know the specifics of your situation, but I know that is true, because it is true of every human being without exception. The question is not whether the potential is there. The question is what you intend to do with it. Jim Rohn used to ask, "Why would you spend your life on less than your best?" He was not asking rhetorically. He genuinely wanted people to examine whether the life they were living, the career they were in, the income they were accepting, reflected a genuine deployment of their capabilities or a comfortable settlement with far less. Most people settle, not dramatically, not all at once. They settle in small increments, choosing the familiar over the challenging, the certain over the possible, the comfort of the known over the discomfort of the next level. And each small settlement feels reasonable in the moment. It is only in aggregate, across years, that the total cost of all those small settlements becomes visible. A life that could have been extraordinary, lived at good enough. A career that could have been remarkable, managed at adequate. An income that could have funded genuine freedom, kept at sufficient. You are listening to this audiobook, which means you are someone who takes their development seriously. That already puts you in a category most people never enter. The next step is to take that seriousness and translate it into a specific, committed, written plan for what you are going to learn, develop, and build over the next 12 months. Not a vague intention. A plan, with books on the list, courses identified, Skills targeted, mentors sought, hard conversations committed to, and comfort zones named and scheduled for violation. The marketplace is waiting. It has no bias against you, no preference for someone else, no ceiling it has decided to place on you. It responds to one thing: value. Bring more of it, and it will pay you more for it. That is the whole deal. That has always been the whole deal. Start now. Become someone the market cannot ignore.